Champagne glasses were clinking, and everyone was smiling. My parents stood there, basking in the admiration of 50 guests, pretending to be the perfect, selfless pillars of our family. That was until my grandmother leaned over to me, smiled warmly, and asked a single question that made the music feel like it stopped completely. "So, Grace, how do you like the beautiful house I bought you last year?" I blinked, completely frozen, and replied, "What house, Grandma?" I still live in my tiny, cramped studio apartment. The entire dining room fell into absolute, suffocating silence as every single eye turned slowly toward my parents. My mother's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor, while my father turned completely pale. They had been hiding a massive secret, but Grandma was about to do something no one in that room ever expected. "My name is Grace Anderson. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 10 years, I've been living a life defined by hard work, small budgets, and absolutely zero handouts. While you watch you're watching from, I always love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. For as long as I can remember, my family had a very strict, unspoken hierarchy. At the top was my younger brother, Leo. He was the classic golden child. If Leo wanted a new car, my parents found the money. If Leo wanted to go on an expensive vacation, his bank account was magically funded. Meanwhile, I was living in a cramped, 300-square-foot studio apartment, working 50 hours a week just to cover my rent and utilities. My parents always justified it by telling me how proud they were of my independence, which was really just their polite way of ignoring my struggles so they could focus all their resources on Leo. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandmother, Evelyn. She was a sharp, fiercely independent woman who made her own fortune and lived halfway across the country. She rarely visited, but we spoke on the phone every single week. She always told me that true character is built in the quiet moments of struggle, and she promised me that she was building a foundation for my future. So, when my parents invited me to their grand 30th anniversary dinner, I swallowed my exhaustion, put on my best dress, and went to celebrate them. I had no idea my life was about to shatter. The high-end banquet hall was filled with the soft glow of crystal chandeliers and the gentle hum of polite conversation. My parents stood at the front of the room, raising their glasses, perfectly playing the role of the selfless, devoted couple everyone admired. I sat at the main family table, watching them spin their narrative, when Grandma Evelyn suddenly leaned over to me. She looked around the lavish room, smiled warmly, and asked that fateful question. "So, Grace, how do you like the beautiful suburban house I bought you last year?" I froze, the fork slipping slightly from my fingers. I blinked at her, completely bewildered. "What house, Grandma?" "I still live in my tiny, cramped studio apartment. I haven't bought a thing." The silence that followed was instant and suffocating. It felt as though all the air had been vacuumed right out of the room. Every single eye at our table, and soon the surrounding tables, turned slowly toward my parents. My mother's hand shook violently, her champagne glass slipping and shattering against the marble floor with a sharp, piercing crash. My father's face drained of color so fast he looked like an absolute ghost, while Leo stared down at his plate, suddenly sweating. My parents tried to quickly stammer out a distraction, but Grandma Evelyn's eyes narrowed into slits of pure steel. Instead of making a massive public scene, she simply patted my hand with chilling composure and whispered, "Drink your wine, Grace. We are having a family meeting the very second this dinner ends." The heavy oak doors of the venue's private conference room slammed shut, cutting off the distant music of the party. The atmosphere inside was thick with tension. Grandma Evelyn wasted absolutely no time. She stood at the head of the table, her purse clutched tightly, and demanded an immediate explanation. My mother instantly burst into frantic, defensive chatter, claiming there was just a massive misunderstanding. My father jumped in, his voice cracking as he lied through his teeth, insisting the money was safely locked away in a high-yield investment account because the housing market simply wasn't right for me yet. Grandma Evelyn let out a cold, sharp laugh that cut right through their desperate fabrications. "Do not dare lie to me," she snapped, opening her bag with methodical, terrifying precision. She pulled out a clear, undeniable record of bank transfers and slammed them onto the table. I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs as I read the text. The evidence proved that over 14 months ago, Grandma had wired the full cash amount to a joint trust account my parents legally managed for me. It was explicitly meant for the immediate purchase of a beautiful, 3-bedroom home located just minutes from my office. My jaw dropped as the horrifying reality sank in. My own parents hadn't just delayed my gift, they had actively, deliberately intercepted a life-changing inheritance that was meant to secure my entire future, keeping me trapped in poverty while they held the keys. Under the crushing weight of the bank proof, my father's defensive wall completely crumbled. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples, while my mother looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. My father finally admitted the truth, and every single word felt like a physical blow to my chest. They hadn't invested the money at all. Instead, they had used the full cash amount and the house ownership as immediate leverage to bail Leo out of a disastrous, failed business venture and a mountain of secret luxury debt. To keep his creditors at bay and shield him from public embarrassment, they had secretly transferred ownership of the property under a hidden, family-controlled shell company. Leo sat in the corner, staring at his expensive designer shoes, looking incredibly guilty but offering absolutely no apology. I felt tears of raw betrayal stinging my eyes as I looked at the people who were supposed to protect me. When I asked how they could possibly do this to me, my mother had the audacity to lean forward and say, "You have to understand, Grace. You are so independent and strong. You always figure things out on your own. Your brother was drowning, and he needed the help so much more than you did." Their words made my skin crawl. It was the ultimate, devastating culmination of 32 years of parental neglect and blatant favoritism. My entire life, my independence hadn't been a source of pride for them. It was just their favorite excuse to cast me aside. They had willingly sacrificed my financial security, keeping me trapped in a tiny studio apartment, just to fund my brother's reckless lifestyle and protect his unearned privilege. My parents actually thought they could smooth things over with a typical family compromise. My father cleared his throat, adjusting his tie, and casually suggested that they could just pay me back slowly, in small monthly installments, over the next few decades. They genuinely believed a hollow promise would make this massive betrayal disappear. But Grandma Evelyn was already 10 steps ahead of them, and her expression remained completely unyielding. She leaned over the table, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet, frosty whisper that made everyone instantly freeze. "You foolish children," Grandma muttered coldly. She explained that the trust account she had established wasn't just a standard bank account. It had incredibly strict, legally binding clauses attached to it. By deliberately diverting those earmarked funds for an unauthorized individual and actively falsifying signatures to hide the property deed under a shell company, they hadn't just broken our family's trust. They had crossed a massive line. They had committed major, actionable bank fraud and grand larceny. Grandma Evelyn then laid out a terrifying, ironclad ultimatum. She looked my parents directly in the eyes and said, "You have exactly 7 days to legally reverse that transfer, dissolve that fraudulent company, and place the completely clear deed of that house solely into Grace's name. If that property is not completely hers by next Friday morning, I am personally handing this full financial audit directly to the authorities, and I will watch both of you and Leo go to prison." The absolute panic in the room was electric. My mother began to hyperventilate, realizing that their desperate attempt to save their golden child had just walked them all straight into a trap. The next 7 days were an absolute living nightmare. Desperate to save Leo from facing criminal charges and completely terrified of losing their own precious social standing, my parents completely spun into a panic. Instead of holding themselves accountable, they chose to turn their toxic behavior completely on me. My phone buzzed around the clock with frantic text messages, sobbing voicemails, and aggressive guilt trips. My mother wept openly on the phone, accusing me of trying to tear the family apart over mere bricks and mortar, while my father coldly demanded that I grow up and show some compassion for my own brother's fragile future. Even Bianca, Leo's deeply superficial fiancée, sent me long paragraphs claiming that if I forced them to surrender the house, it would completely ruin their upcoming wedding plans and humiliate them in front of all their high society friends. They tried every single psychological trick in the book to make me feel like the ultimate villain of my own story. But for the first time in my 32 years of life, I refused to back down. I stood my ground like concrete, drawing an incredible, newfound wave of inner strength from Grandma Evelyn's unwavering support. When Friday morning finally arrived, we gathered inside a quiet corporate lawyer's office downtown. Grandma Evelyn sat right beside me, watching my parents and Leo like a hawk tracking its prey. With shaking hands, tear-stained faces, and a room full of bitter silence, my parents were forced to authorize the transfer. They officially dissolved the shell company and moved the unencumbered deed of the beautiful, three-bedroom suburban home entirely into my name. 3 months later, I am completely settled into my gorgeous new home. Every morning, I wake up, look out at my beautiful backyard, and feel a deep sense of peace and security that I never thought possible while living in that cramped studio apartment. Following Grandma Evelyn's strict advice, I have completely cut off all contact with my parents and my brother. It was a painful choice, but it made me realize a vital truth. Blood does not automatically mean family. True family is defined by love, loyalty, and respect. I will forever be grateful to my amazing grandmother for stepping in, uncovering the truth, and protecting my future when no one else would. She didn't just give me a house. She gave me my dignity back. Now, I'm incredibly curious about all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. What would you have done if your own parents stole your inheritance to bail out a golden sibling? Would you have signed or walked away? Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the